In Hirokazu Koreda 2023's Monster, Saori, a single mother, noticed that her son Minato was behaving weirdly. He cut his hair out of a sudden. He lost one of his shoes. She found dirt in her son's drinking bottle, and her son said his homeroom teacher, Mr. Hori, said his brain was switched with a pig's brain. She suspects that her son was bullied. She then went to his son's school to confront the teacher about the bullying. But the teachers were all behaving in such a strange and uncanny way. They uttered words that were already scripted and kept repeating the same thing again and again. Eventually, she confronted Mr. Hori face to face. Mr. Hori, however, responded by saying that it was her son who was actually a bully. I'm going to spoil most of the movie. You should watch it now because it's a very beautiful film and it's my current favorite. I really didn't expect it to be that good, but it was, so you should watch it first. Or you can skip it if you want, with the chapter below. Okay, let's continue. The movie then cuts to Mr. Hori's perspective. Here, the movie revealed that Mr. Hori was actually innocent. He didn't abuse or hurt Minato, and yet he was forced to confess and apologize for the abusive behavior toward Minato. Subsequently, he lost his job due to the commotion. It's unfair. To him, he was doing the right thing and just trying to stop Minato from bullying his other classmate, Yori, but luck was not on his side. Later, he stumbled upon Yori's old homework essay, the boy who was bullied, and noticed something strange. This homework is Yori's, but it seemed to spell out Minato's name. He then realized that Minato wasn't actually a bully. The movie then cuts to another perspective, Minato's. Here, it was revealed that Yori and Minato were actually close friends. They didn't talk at school because Yori was considered peculiar and Minato was afraid he would get bullied too. However, he couldn't stand the sight of people bullying Yori. His disruptive behavior in school was actually his own way of trying to protect Yori from the bullies, which Mr. Hori confused for bullying. Yori's father is also abusive. Despite that, outside school, the boys would also go into the woods, play together, and be themselves, away from the world. Minato was behaving weirdly because, well, he likes Yori in ways that a normal boy shouldn't have for another boy. So he felt conflicted. That's why he cut his hair when Yori was caressing it sweetly, why he threw a fit when others bullied Yori, and why he fought Yori when the bullies asked him if he liked Yori. But he can't say it out loud and lies about it because he thinks he can never be happy being that way. This movie relies heavily on perspective to slowly reveal the truth and make you see differently each time you see the world from a new character. But it's also trying to show you that these characters are imprisoned by invisible walls. Saori is restricted by social norms, Mr. Hori is restricted by his manhood and the school system, and the children are forced to live in a world created by adults, and they are affected in terms of violence that has been committed against them. Yet, the kids are able to escape it. The director, Koreda, wanted to show the contrast between the boys when they're with adults and when they're together. When they're around their parents or in school, the boys can't be themselves, and it shows how oppressive the world is. He said, their freedom comes when the boys are together in nature and away from home or school. The natural environment, when they're playing outside, walking, and even playing, is lit by sunshine and vibrancy. That's where they can be themselves and be true to who they are. Too often, we find ourselves to be in the same position as these characters, having our freedom restricted. And the theme of freedom is often depicted in films. In Into the Wild, adapted from the real story of Christopher McCandless, the character tried to break free from the chains of safety and security in society and lived in the wilderness. In V for Vendetta, V, an anarchist, is fighting the fascist and oppressive totalitarian government for freedom. The recurring theme of freedom shows that we are obsessed with freedom because, according to moral and political philosophy, freedom is the greatest contributor to human happiness. In the movie Monster, the kids aren't shown to be happy, when they're in environments that limit their sense of freedom, like school or around other adults. But when they're together and away from all the restrictions, they can be seen playing and smiling. They're shown to be happy because they can be who they are and they are free. Our freedom is constricted by societal restrictions on self-expression that are considered out of the norm. A boy has to behave like a boy, and a mother has to behave like a mother. You have to play a character to function properly in society, and each character is granted a unique set of freedoms. That character changes as you age, and so does the freedom that comes with such a character. When you're little, you have the freedom to play at the playground all you want. But as an adult, you can't. If you do something out of the norm or play the wrong character, like behaving effeminately despite being a boy, dressing like a dog, or marrying a fictional character, society will find a way to shun you, to follow the norm. Those rules are not explicitly written, but somehow we still follow them closely, even though they limit our freedom to a certain degree. Now consider the rules that are explicitly written. Can you imagine how much further our freedom is limited and how further we are willing to follow them? You can't go overseas without proper documents. You can't go to secret military sites of the government. And in some countries, they even stop you from thinking a certain way. Your freedom has been limited since the day you were born. Even when you think you're free to make decisions, sometimes the decisions are already made for you. The food that you put on your table and the clothes that you wear are decided by companies that produce them and the taste of society that wants them. This is evident in how companies or corporations work in the free market. They control the kind of food that you eat and the products that you use. Sure, you can control what you buy, but you can't control the way the food is produced. You can't tell them how much pesticide to use and how to grow the food. You can only choose to buy or not to buy, often from a set of other preconditioned products at the market. If you happen to live in a rich country with a large population, you may have more options to choose from, and this may give you a sense of freedom. But if you live in a less fortunate place with a smaller population that doesn't care too much about the kind of food they eat, there would be less demand, and hence fewer options of products to choose from. They may not care about healthy food, so there would be no demand for healthy food, and you're forced to eat what they eat. Your freedom is limited by the freedom of other people, and their desires affect yours. Those kinds of rules that we talk about are social and a product of human construct. You can still violate them, do something weird, and society might shame you. Or if you kill someone, you'll end up in jail. But there are other types of rules that you can't violate because it's impossible to violate. These rules are biological and physical. You can't go to outer space because you can't breathe without oxygen. You can't run as fast as a cheetah. You can't move through physical matter because, physics. These rules forever restrict our freedom, and we can only imagine how much power it can grant us if we got a hold of them. For that reason, we see many human fantasies being depicted in science fiction that violate the laws of physics and biology. How much can you restrict someone's freedom? Well, let's imagine a person. He has the normal set of freedom everyone has. Now, let's put him in a box. Here, the person is restricted from moving, hence, taking away somewhat some of his physical freedom of movement. Now, let's make the box smaller and smaller. With every inch of the box moving closer to his body, he'll lose more and more freedom, until finally, he cannot move. This person has essentially lost all his freedom to move. At this point, what kind of freedom do they have? Well, one could argue that he still has the ability to think. Viktor Frankl was a survivor of the Holocaust concentration camp. He said, even to the worst extreme, where all of our freedoms are taken and you strip the last from every man, you can't take away the last of the human freedoms, the freedom to choose. We can't stop someone from thinking. I think, therefore I am. A very famous quote came from the fact that no matter how much we doubt the world, we can't doubt the fact that we are thinking. So, how do you control someone's mind? In Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, the novel tells a story about a totalitarian government that controls its citizens using drugs, hypnosis, genetic engineering, and pleasurable distractions, all in the name of a peaceful and ideal society. The citizens are not aware of the violation of their freedom because, in the novel, people are controlled by distractions and pleasure, not brute force and physical violence. They are controlled by the things they love. This may be a work of fiction, but Huxley also talked about the psychological research of his time that touches on the subject of propaganda, persuasion, brainwashing, chemical persuasion, and sleep learning. At the time, unbeknownst to everyone, the US government had already conducted a study on mind control. In 1953, the CIA conducted an illegal experiment on unsuspecting people, and it's called the MK-Ultra. They used drugs, hypnosis, electric shocks, and other forms of torture without the subject's consent. It aimed to produce a drug that could control someone's mind, and a truth drug that could be used during interrogation. After several unreported cases of deaths and several decades of experiments, it was finally halted in 1973 after being deemed useless and only revealed to the public in the summer of 1975. It's now famous in many conspiracy theories due to its nature and the destruction of most of its records. Our reality is unique to us, and it is unique because it is subjective. However, if our reality is unique only to us, we can't verify anything except our own experience of the world. That's why we have to share reality with other people and depend on the collective agreement on what reality is. We cannot diverge from the collective reality because we need them to verify our experience. We can only see the world with reference to how they see the world. And if we see the world differently than they do, things might not make sense. You have to agree on what red looks like, what the idea of justice is, and other concepts that you, as a society, share and recognize. Just like a language, you have to be able to speak a language that you and everyone understand. And having a language that only you can understand is useless. Here, you are restricted from seeing the world differently from the society you live in. Freedom stems from our wants and desires. Without desiring something, the concept of freedom will lose its relevance. If someone doesn't want anything, then they wouldn't try to pursue something. And if he doesn't pursue something, then an obstacle can get in the way of the pursuit. Therefore, he won't feel restricted. Because he is devoid of desires and of obstacles in the pursuit of desires, he won't feel the need to be free. Hence, the concept of freedom doesn't exist to him. However, does it mean he doesn't have the concept of freedom, or does it mean that the person is free? I think we want freedom because we want to be happy. Ask yourself, why do you want what you want? You want to be happy, right? And imagine yourself getting what you want. Will you be happy? The concept of freedom exists because we have desires, and there are restrictions to those desires. But what happens if you remove them entirely? All the possible restrictions and limitations imaginable, to the point of being capable of doing the impossible, to the point where we can choose our fate, be immortal, and break the physical laws, well, would become godlike. But here's when the question feels pointless and useless. I'm not a god, and I doubt that you're a god. So I don't know what it feels like to have unlimited power, and I don't think this question is relevant to us, because no matter how much you imagine and fantasize what it'd be like to become a god, you don't have the freedom to be one. There are many ways to think about freedom, and the freedom that we were talking about concerns the freedom to do whatever we want. But it's impossible to obtain total freedom in that manner. Even if we're free to do what we want from an unlimited number of choices, it might not be the best idea. Take the Library of Babel, which has books with all possible orderings and arrangements of characters. Due to the library's almost infinite nature, it contains true predictions of the future, the biographies of any person, and all the books that will ever be written. But the library must also contain pure gibberish and completely random and meaningless orderings of character, far outnumbering the meaningful and useful books. Applying this to the scenario where we have unlimited number of choices, the useless and dangerous choices will far outnumber the useful and meaningful ones. So maybe total freedom is not what you want. Maybe we need a shift in perspective. To Epicurus, the greatest freedom is not the freedom to do something, but the freedom from something, like addiction and vain. Freedom from wanting something that you don't need or bad for you. Restriction and limitation are not bad. Sometimes they exist to uphold the freedom that you have, and you don't need unlimited freedom to be happy. You just have to find the delicate balance between freedom and restrictions. And maybe you can find your true freedom there. Thank you.